Thanks for having me out here. My name is Jeff. I'm a woodturner out of St. Louis, and kind of a semi-regular. I'm down here at least once a year because Zeller keeps calling and I keep answering, so I keep showing up, and there you go. It still works. My email still works. Yeah. Hey, are you doing a thing? Yeah, I'll be down. Not a problem. I really enjoy coming down. You guys are a lot of fun. I have some longer relationships with some of you as well. Some of you play with the St. Louis Woodturners on occasion that you go to some of our meetings up there. Some of you are customers, and then there's Zeller. Let me leave it at that. No, I really do enjoy coming down here, and I gotta admit, I'm maybe not 100% disappointed that I'm not going to be able to go all the way through with all the turning. I've been on the road a lot, and I'm really tired today. So all of my prep work this afternoon sucked. There was a lot. It's like, are you kidding me? Did I forget how to do this? This is stupid. But today I'm going to show you something really kind of intense. So we can go to the overhead real quick. All right, so this is a Chinese puzzle ball. Okay, it's 2.5 inch diameter, made out of one solid piece of maple. It is not a box. There is no glue except for where the wood had original cracking that I needed to take care of. This particular sphere has 6 spheres, one inside another, that have holes in them, and a seventh very small solid sphere right down in the very center. Each layer is an 1/8 inch thick. It is rather delicate, but Ken did not manage to break it. So I'll just start here so that you can grab that. We'll pass that around. Yeah. To date, I've made a total of one, and that's it. I did it. I did it. I posted online 2 months ago or whatever. Didn't hear nothing, and all of a sudden there's this email comes through from your wood turning club, the newsletter that I'm on the list for. And in November, Jeff Hornung is going to be the demonstrator. He's going to be doing the Chinese puzzle ball. Like, that's not a demo, Tom. I'm not doing it. All right, we're doing it. So I called him up. He's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "I'm good to be fine. Everything will be fine." So yeah, we're going to do it. I think one. Um, to touch on something that Tom was talking about earlier, he was talking about those tools that you bought years ago that you never got around to using. I'm kind of in the mindset where if I own something and it's not earning its keep, it needs to go. And I've got too much. The few of you that have been to my shop know there's no more room in my space. If I add one more chuck key, we're going to have to buy a bigger piece of property, is what it is. So to kind of solve that problem, I'm looking at all my stuff, and it's like, okay, I need to use this. I need to figure it out now, or in a couple of weeks, or I simply need to sell it. If I need to buy it again, 2, 3 years down the road when I'm ready, maybe I'll do that. But if I'm not, it's got to go. So I was, because of that, after I came back from SWAT this past year, SWAT partnered up with the Ornamental Turner Society, and there was a lot of rose engine and ornamental work demonstrations going on in conjunction with SWAT. So that's going to be they're going to be paired up again moving forward from here. That if you go to SWAT in late August in Waco, Texas, you also have the ability to see the Ornamental Turners Symposium as well, because it's being held same time, same that channel, same that place. And for me, it was a lot of fun because I have some ornamental machines. Hadn't really spent a lot of time dealing with it, but I've spent an enormous amount of money. Yes. You have a great player. So I don't have a garage. I have a 2-car workshop. I have a 2-car studio. The cars live outside, much to my wife's chagrin. Is what it is. It's fine, except on nights when it hails. She gets a little nervous, hail, stupid workshop. Anyway, so I started thinking about, all right, I'm inspired. I want to use the ornamental machines. what are we going to do? Well, Christmas is coming in August, so we're thinking about making ornaments and whatnot. And I started thinking, all right, what can I do that not everybody else can do or that very few people can do? What can I do with what I have that maybe incorporates the rose engine or the ornamental turner or something? And I started thinking, well, I could do ornaments with ornamental embellishing on them. So rose engine work on the surface of a sphere or an oval or something. Put a drop spindle and a finial cap on it, little hook, sell it for $100, and Bob's your uncle, and there you go. So how do you move forward to do that? Well, you have to line out precise spherical geometry on the surface of a piece of wood, which is usually where I go, never mind, because me and math, me and precision. I'm not. Nobody looks at me and says, "Yeah, you're a precise precision kind of guy." You're engineering. No, no, I'm not. My dad was. I didn't get the engineering genes. It just never happened. It never will happen. But I've discovered that if I take a little time and start to break things down, the really complicated crap that, well, I can't do that. It's too hard. I don't have mathematical whatever. I own a slide rule. It's my father's. He showed me. Tried to show. I don't know. But when you start breaking things down, these really complicated things down into very small individual components, lots of times you realize that this isn't that difficult. It might be technical, but being technical and being difficult are not necessarily the same thing. I don't want to do difficult. Lots of times I can figure out technical. So I kind of started to add into my demonstration rotations the premise that if I can do it, anybody can. All right. And I'm kind of not kidding. If I can figure this stuff out, anybody can do it. Okay. Because I don't do math. There's a lot of math. Figured out you don't have to do math. You just have to read the book, plug in the numbers where they're appropriate, make a couple of marks, and move on with your life. It's not hard. Okay. So we'll start with wood selection. Doesn't really matter. Spindle orientation is usually going to be best. So grain is running parallel to the lathe. That's what we're looking for. We want dry. We want kiln dried. We want stable. We want something that doesn't have a lot of interesting grain. This might not be where you want to use a burl, simply because we're going really thin. There's a lot of internal stress happening while we're doing what we're going to be doing. And if you're heavy-handed as well, you can shatter what you're doing, tear it out, get a catch on the inside. I did that this afternoon. It's like, really? And you can end up ruining more than you are successful with. Lots of times when that happens, you get frustrated and you put the tools away and you're like, I'm never going to do this again. So if you happen to have Chinese ball tools in your toolbox and you're planning on selling them, give me a call, because I'm starting to build a kit so that I can teach hands-on classes with this particular demonstration as well, because I can't help myself. Anyway, so any type of really straight grain but really dry kiln dried wood is going to be fun. You can use stabilized. There's no reason why you couldn't. I'm sure you could use acrylic or hybrids. I haven't done it yet because I've only done one successfully. But thinking through, you need to be able to get inside the sphere and polish each individual layer, or it's just going to look like scratched up acrylic. So I don't know that would be the best medium for this particular process, but I will probably try it when I'm a little bit more comfortable with everything. And I'll report back. I'll let you know. If we've got a picture of me with little acrylic shards buried in my forehead, probably have a good idea that it didn't work. The turning process. Yes, we're using high precision specialty tools, but the turning process is really very basic. They're inside scrapers. We're just scraping an undercut, just like we would use a bowl gouge or a scraper to do an undercut rim on a nice bowl. We're simply doing an undercut inside scrape. Okay? I know that makes it sound simple, but the turning part is simple. It's getting to the turning part that's kind of the problem. Reference and resources. There are Chinese puzzle balls have been around for centuries. And technically, they're not even Chinese, they're German. There's indications that German artisans started doing these multi-layer constructions out of single individual pieces of wood. And they did it by hand. Back in the early 1500s. That's how far we've gone with that. And then the Chinese artisans took that and really went to town. That there's a lot of jade puzzle balls where there's 2 or 3 balls inside of a big jade conglomerate with dragons and whatnot, and they're super cool. But David Springett, who I believe is still alive, I don't know if he's still overly active, but he's an English turner. He really got into doing all of these very high precision spherical based turnings. And in order to do them back in the early 90s or whenever he was working on this, he had to make his own tools. Well, for me, that's a big no-no. I would not even consider starting the process if I have to make precision tools. I'm not that guy. Okay. I'm kind of changing my mind because I have access to other technology that may make the tool making process easier. But this was the first book that David Springett came out with. It's Woodturning Wizardry. Let me go to the overhead. Oh, it's in a little thumbnail. There we go. All right, Woodturning Wizardry. The green one, the solid green one. This is the original edition. He did an updated edition, Woodturning Wizardry Revised, and this version is the one that really allowed me to understand the setup, and it's the setup that's the hard part. You get the setup right, you make a couple of jigs, you buy a couple of jigs, and the turning part is relatively simple. But you can see on the book that this is some fairly complex stuff. So I'm going to pass those around, take a look at them. David Springett also has a DVD on the topic. It is really boring. It is incredibly. It is so bad because he's a straight lace, stiff upper lip Brit, and every time he mentions measurements in millimeters, 2 millimeters, or 50 millimeters, or 2 inches. Every time he says a measurement, he has to tell the metric and the imperials at the same time, even though we know he's talking about a 50 millimeter sphere or 2 inches. And it just constant overgrown, and just really boring. But there's an enormous amount of information, and he actually goes over a couple of the projects in that DVD. He makes it sound much more complicated than it really is because he tries to explain the geometry. I figured out you don't have to understand the geometry. I was getting in my own way. Okay, the reason why I was never successful up to this point is because I didn't understand the math. Now I have to understand this. I just have to be able to take that number and translate it to vernier calipers or a compass or something so that I can then put it onto the sphere. I also understood that the first markup, you're taking a ring and you're breaking it into 5 pieces. Doesn't have to be 1.38 inches. That's doesn't matter. Well, if 1.38 inches, it's not working. It should break into 5 equal pieces. Erase it. Adjust your drawing calipers and go again until you take that first ring and break it into 5 equal pieces. Once you get to 5 equal pieces, the rest of the layout process is simple. You don't need to understand spherical geometry, which is really helpful because math is stupid. All right, so the first thing that we have to do, tell me I'm wrong. The first thing we have to do is we have to have a sphere that really is accurate. Okay, this part is important. I say a lot of this isn't important, but we need a sphere. I never figured out the juggling thing, so that's on my list of things to learn to go with this demo. You have to be able to turn a sphere that is a very specific diameter because the tools that we're using, whether it's these tools or these tools, the diameter of the sphere is based on the radius, the particular radius and length of the cutter. Okay? So for this set of tools, I need a sphere that is exactly 2 5/8 inches or 6.66 something millimeters. It has to be exactly 2 5/8 inches. Non-negotiable, that's what it has to be. For the other set of tools, it has to be 2.5 inches diameter. Non-negotiable, that's what it has to be. I cannot use these 2 different tool sets and make these projects larger or smaller. It has to be that 2 5/8 inches.
Would you verify this?
I would verify that it is currently complete. And the only one I was really worried about was Ken, and he held it twice and just dropped it. So, well, good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let me see that.
Yeah, here we go. All right. So once you understand that the crown set of tools, these are the ones that were designed by David Springer. Huh?
He's dead.
He is dead by now. Okay. Moment of silence. Okay, moment of silence for David Springer. Never got to meet him. Really talented woodturner, but man, that one DVD just but once you understand that the precision comes from the setup, not from what you actually do with the tool, it kind of makes everything a little bit easier to digest and then apply and then turn a successful piece. Now, there's two major brands. One is the David Springer tools, which are made by Crown. I know you can still buy them from Packard new. You can go out and buy a set. Anybody here actually have the David Springer one? Okay, we'll talk in a few minutes. I got something for you. Have you tried this? Okay, so you don't even have the failure point yet. I got something. I have one setup jig that I will let you have. The other set of tools was offered by Conestoga Works, which is the company that made the one Lichtenberg fractal system that probably wasn't going to kill you. It's an AAW sanctioned company, so we're not going to talk about fractal burning. It scares the crap out of me because of electricity. But these tools, I'm almost positive, were made in conjunction with Brad Davis, who is a really good ornamental turner as well as regular turner. And I like these a whole lot better. The gentleman that owned Conestoga Works passed away this past August. I don't know if the family's going to continue the business or if anybody's going to pick it up. I have not reached out to Brad to ask or beg to see if these tools are going to be continue to be manufactured and available. I think it's too soon. I'm trying to be, polite and reasonable to the family with the loss of the patriarch of the family. But I like these better. The tool setup is intuitive. You don't need a setup jig. They're a lot easier to control when you're doing what you need to be doing. There's very little fiddling around with the tools when you move from cutter to cutter to cutter to cutter. The Spring-It tools, these are based on his original handmade tool designs. So there's lots of screws, there's lots of adjustments. And the reason why a lot of people fail is because, one, the tools are not intuitive. When you put the cutter in, you assume it's where it needs to be. No, you need to use a setup jig in order to get the cutter extended the right length, but you don't know that because the instructions really do suck. And the Green Book really didn't mention it, but the revised edition book kind of gave me the idea that, oh, hey, maybe I really do need a setup jig. Maybe that's the problem. And the result that you get if you don't do it right. Okay, so we're going to show the overhead. If you can see that right there on the top. This is a successful hole, a successful turning with the Spring-It tools using my setup jig. I was really happy with that. I screwed up that hole. That was part of my grumblings of this afternoon. And the thing that got me to understand that I need a setup jig is I went through the entire process, and I was doing my last hole. So you do deepest to shallowest when you're doing this. Because I did not have the last cutter set appropriately, I blew out that top rig. So I will pass this around to show you what happens when you don't set up the tools properly, or when you're using the Spring-It set that's not as intuitive as the Conestoga set. And like I said, I don't know if these are going to be available. If you can find them, this is my favorite. But I have made it my mission to figure out this one because I know those sets are currently still being sold. When we're talking about the cutters, all right, so just real quick, these are the cutters for the Conestoga Works set. There is a tool simply to hog out the hole, just to get rid of the material and create a cone-shaped hole. And then there are 6 individual little cutters, 5 in my hand, 1 that's in the jig. Longest to shortest, we're going deepest to shallowest in order to make the 7 layers on that sphere that we sent around the first one. Again, these are all very intuitive to set up. And if I was able to actually do the turning part, that would be what I would be demonstrating here. Now, if we're talking about the spring tools, again, it's the same principle. We're going to go deepest to shallowest. First issue that I have with these is the set comes with a locking screw on the back of the handle, and it comes with 1 screw that you have to move from cutter to cutter to cutter to cutter. So I need to take these to the hardware store and get at least 3 more screws to minimize the moving 1 screw, dropping 1 screw, finding the magnet on the stick to then relocate that stupid screw. And yeah, you guys have done it. We've all done it as part of the game. So they're not as intuitive. And again, I need to use a setup jig in order to get these in there right. We'll talk about that when we get to the actual use of the tools themselves. So we need to talk about the sphere turning. Did you guys have a sphere demo recently? A month or 2 ago? No, that wasn't you. Somebody did. Long time ago. All right. So we have to get to a point where we're making a very precise sphere. Again, a setup jig is kind of necessary. I realized recently that I have a machine that I have not used, and it's not earning its keep. And it's similar to the Cricut vinyl cutter. I've got a Silhouette Cameo, older style machine, but it had never been used. I figured out how to use it recently and discovered that I could use that to cut a very accurate sphere turning jig or sphere template out of heavy cardstock. So this and that little window box, the thumbnail box, 2 5/8 inches. I simply made a sphere that was 2 5/8 inches, cut it off, shortened it a little bit, cut it out. I had the machine cut it out on heavy cardstock. You could do this if you're comfortable with knives, X-Acto knives, and compasses and whatnot. I'm not the precision guy. I know I'm not going to get a good, precise setup jig. So being able to utilize a little technology that I currently have, I made a setup jig, and I've got another one here for the 2.5 inch diameter sphere. And I can use this jig to very quickly gauge how round my sphere actually is. I'm probably going to get to a point where I start 3D printing these. Even though it's heavy cardstock, it's a little flimsy. Not going to pass you around, but you're more than welcome to come up and check that out. The turning of the sphere is relatively simple. It's just basic spindle work. We'll go ahead and talk about that. I highly recommend using a sphere turning jig to finish the sphere itself, finish that process, simply because it's accurate. And again, we're not going to be able to do the sphere turning jig because of the machine. That's all right. I'll set it up and talk about it briefly. So the setup for, if we were using the Connoisseur Works tool, I just got a almost 2 5/8 inch diameter piece of maple. The only setup I did, I marked my centers on each end. I put a quick tenon on the one edge, and we're gonna do a quick markup, and then briefly turn. And then briefly turn that sphere. So I've got a pencil, my digital vernier calipers right there. If you don't have a reasonable set of digital vernier calipers, get a decent set of digital vernier calipers. You don't have to spend a ton of money, maybe a little bit better than Harbor Freight, but it doesn't have to be a lot. Basically, the better quality the digital calipers, the longer the battery life. Even if you put a good battery and a cheap pair of calipers, are going to die super fast because the thing won't turn off when you want it to. It'll stay on longer than it needs to, and it will automatically turn on when it's in the box just because they're cheap. Always zero out. Okay, so I've got it closed all the way. I zero out so that I'm being as accurate as humanly possible. I need a 2 5/8 inch sphere. So what I want to do is I want to split the difference, and I want to set my caliper for an inch for 1.38 inches. Okay, so I've got it on inches with decimals. We're going to go to 1.38. I think we have 1.30. Lock that in place. See, I don't have to be precise because this is. And I can take this, mark out my center line, mark out my rightmost edge of the sphere, move it over, center line, mark out my leftmost edge of the sphere. I'm happy with this now. Let's get the short tool that's back on here. At the center line, there's my right edge, there's my left edge. Really simple. I don't need to think forward. There you go. Smooths all the way down. I'm going to start. I'm going to start by seeing how it rolls. There you go. And not
Yeah.
forward. I hit remove go. Okay, so it's running fairly straight. I'm not going to worry about roughing at this point. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to start out with standard spindle gouge. I don't need to turn a sphere. I need to turn kind of a balanced egg shape. So I'm going to round over one side and round over the other side. I'm simply going to work with the standard spindle gouge. I could use a bowl gouge if I wanted to. Trying to move out away from the bowl gouge and use some of the other tools that I've spent a lot of money on that are just sitting in my drawer. I'm not a big spindle turner usually, but I'm working on that more. I'm more of a bowl turner and an artist. Oh, you guys know what I do. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to run at the speed in which I'm comfortable. I'm not going to tell you what speed that is because not everybody is comfortable turning at the speed that I'm comfortable at. And I think for kicks and giggles, because this is the first turn on somebody else's lathe, I'm going to go ahead. It's not that the lathe I'm concerned about, it's the chuck. My dovetail is set for a Nova, and this is definitely not. So we're going to start between centers, mostly because this is a live event. I don't want there to be any surprises, or Ken doesn't want there to be any surprises. All right, so we're simply going to start rounding things over. I've given myself a visual reference as to where that line was, and I'm not trying to make a sphere. I got a jig for that. I don't have to make a sphere. I just need to get it more round than it currently is. All right. I want it round-ish. And I want it to be on the heavier side. If I remove too much wood too early in the process, I'm not going to have a sphere. I'm going to have a round thing with a flat spot. I've done that a lot before. If you want, because you've got these lines marked out, you can grab a parting tool, part down on the inside edge of your line just to get some clearance. I simply want to have a reasonable amount of security when I'm working here. I really don't want this to rest. We're going to go to this big one. All right, that's great. I'm not a prima donna, I swear. Okay, I am a prima donna, but you guys should know that already. All right, so we're gonna round out the other side. Again, I'm just kind of going for a oval-ish eggish shape. I'm not trying to be precise here because I don't need to be precise. Like I said, I'm going to use that sphere turning jig in a moment to really dial this in. And the sphere jig that I use, the one that I own, is the Carter Products sphere jig. That one cuts the radius in this orientation, but it does so in a manner that I can get my tool rest out of the way, and I can do 3/4 or more of a sphere fairly accurately, fairly quickly, without needing to do a bunch of other pullable rings. So once I'm pretty sure I'm close to what I need, I can go ahead and do a disconnect on this side, worry down my nub, get rid of that, because I don't need it. This one. All right. And there we go. We have a very non-precise shape. I don't know what shape that is. All right, let's get this out of the way. So the next thing that I would do is I would grab my sphere turning jig, which is this guy. And it is currently set for my Powermatic 3520V. So without an hour's worth of setup and adjusting, I really don't want to try to mount this on your lathe. Mostly because it takes forever to what the benefits. But let's pretend that that is secure. Way higher than what your machine is. Let's pretend that this is secure. I will adjust the cutter. It's a carbide cutter. This particular one happens to be mounted on a bar. The bar is at a negative rate. So I'm doing negative rate scraping, nothing serious, nothing fancy. But I can rotate this jig from about there to beyond center at the tip. And I can adjust this and advance the cutter and adjust it and advance the cutter, take it past, move the cutter and take it past, move the cutter in, until I'm getting to a point where my template is really starting to register properly. So with the magic of television, all right, everybody close your eyes for just a few moments. You're not, you're still with us. Close your eyes. Oh, dears, come on, come on. All right, so ta-da! And I use my sphere jig and I turn the sphere. Okay. A couple of things on the sphere jig. You really do need to turn at a reasonable speed, and the reason why is because if you turn too slow, especially when you're trying to do your setup, it's going to catch, it's going to dig, it's going to tear out fibers. You're going to get really pissy. There was a lot of really pissy this afternoon. So my first practice piece today, I'll go ahead and pass that around because it's embarrassing. First practice piece torn itself up, and it's simply because I forgot to turn the speed up. I was running about 700 because I'm dealing with a small diameter, specifically 2 5/8 inches. I can run upwards of 2,000, 2,500 if you're comfortable with that. The faster the small diameter pieces are turning, especially when we're using something like a negative grade scraper, especially when we're trying to get a good surface off the tool but be precise at the same time, the more you're going to benefit from a little more speed. Okay, if this was something big and monstrous, it'd be a different story. Once we've got that turned down and we're happy, really wonder how accurate this sucker is now. Let's find out. Get on. All right. Okay. All right. We're gonna do another. All right. So the next thing that I need to do, because I've got from here to here, absolutely accurate, according to my little template jig. And you can see how it's wanting to just start to buckle when I'm almost all the way down. You can see there's just a little gap right at the top. It's not perfect. I would get to that final perfectness with a little sand. The better the surface is before I start digging out those holes, the less mucking around I have to worry about trying to sand a very thin shell later on. but I've got it super close. All right. So the next step would be to do a dismount on this. Again, I can go right back to my parting tool. You guys know you can use a parting tool to scribe an arc, right? Right? You can use a parting tool to scribe an arc. I will, because somebody in here doesn't know that they can use a parting tool to scribe an arc, right? Somebody does. All right. So normally parting tool, we push, we part, life is good. Okay, because this is a scraper, a single edge scraper that happens to have a hard corner on that side and a hard corner on the other side. I can use one of those corners and scrape in any direction, angle, curve that I want. I'm not going to try to do an accurate scrape. I'm not going to try to be precise with a parting tool in this orientation, but I don't just have to make a flat parting cut and then deal with all of that. I can get much closer to the size that I want, or the shape that I want, or the radius that I want, without any issues. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove a little bit more of my material. There's that flat spot I was telling you about. We're going to make a little bit more curve. And I'm going to come out on the outside, and I'm just going to catch the outside corner, the rightmost corner. Are you ready? I'm going to catch it. Or like that. It's going to jump. All right, so I'm coming in simply with that outside corner, and I can use that corner once I catch the fibers, and I can use that to make a round cut, which means I will then end up having to do less work in the next step. Okay, so it's not flat, it's a little bit more round. It makes things a little bit easier. I'm going to do a superhero move. We're going to go ahead and part that up. There we go. Click right into Ken Cap. I've got a little bit of a nub left, and I've got an area that is definitely not perfectly round. So we go to the next step, and we will deal with that. I'm going to be using a pair of cup centers. You can buy them. You can make them. My first set was made, and I made a set of cup centers. Does this have a spindle on it? Is that the spindle? Is that my spindle on it?
Yeah.
The number 2 more staple, right?
Yes.
All right, so I've got a set of cup centers. One side has bearing, it rotates. Don't put that side in the headstock. Put that over here on the tailstock side. Just trust me on that. It works a little bit better. Also, because it's a more stapler accessory, if you're dealing with a machine that's got a self-eject system, make sure that accessory is seated properly, that your tailstock quill is extended far enough. Basically, what these are is a pair of hard rubber cups in metal sleeves that will allow me to hold my sphere long enough to turn away the end or sand it down to true or do whatever it is that I need to do in order to get that less than a quarter dialed in 100%. I find it very easy to just press the sphere up against the chuck that's in the headstock, tailstock up against, little tailstock pressure, sneak my tool rest back up in here. There's always going to be a little bit of wobble, but it's okay because I can dial in the accuracy of the sphere with sandpaper once I'm done. Now, there's a couple of ways that I can deal with that. I can use a regular turning tool. I can use a carbide tool. I'm just going to go ahead and grab my standard spindle gouge. I just want to get rid of that little nubbin right there. This is a great place for carbide. It's a little round carbide or the W, the triangle, radius triangle. Get that turned down, and then I would switch to sandpaper, which I'm not going to do here. But I would switch to sandpaper, either utilizing a foam holder like I have here, which makes it really simple. Vince's Wooden Wonders is where I buy them. Sells them in 2 and 3 inch diameters. It's a hard rubber sanding pad with Velcro, works with the Velcro sand pads. Because it's that more stiff foam rubber, it will allow me to apply reasonable pressure without the pad itself crushing. So I'll get more work done with less time. I'm lazy. That makes me happy. So I would turn on my machine, 600 RPM, sand, 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 and then I would loosen my tailstock and I would rotate to a different orientation. I don't care what orientation, change it up, turn it on, sand, 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 turn it off, loosen the tailstock, rotate it to a different orientation, sand, sand, sand. The best way to make the most accurate sears is get really close and then sand it the rest of the way. Okay. Even if you're not going with precision, the best way to make the best sear, a little more sand. Don't tell your wood turning friends. They'll never know. So, oh, wow, I did that by hand, which is not a lot. I'm sanding by hand. It's not a lot. All right. So once we have that sphere turned and sanded, I will need to mark it out. Where is that one right there? The one that has the torn fibers in it. The next thing that we need to do is now we need to do the hard part, right? Thank you. We need to take that sphere and we need to mark it so that it looks a little something like this, all right? Now, say again? Zoom the camera. Can you use Zoom that is? What? What are you saying? All right, basically what I want to end up is having like 5 kind of clunky, or 12 kind of clunky 5-lobe flowers. And that will give me 12 points that are spaced equidistant across the surface of the sphere. You could do spherical geometry. You could do it the much easier way. All right, so according to the tool company for the Conestoga Works tools, because we're working with a 2 5/8" sphere or 6.65 millimeters, I need to create a single radius around any point on this sphere that is, that is 1.38, okay, 1.38 inches. This is where not being precise is not a bad thing. Except when you're down, yeah, thanks, Ken. Ken did it. All right, so we're going to take our vernier calipers and we're going to get.
Hey, Jeff, you talked about a vernier. Better see the vernier caliper.
Yeah. What kind do I have?
Yeah.
These are Easy Cap from iGauge. They're about $1 more expensive than the Pittsburgh one that you can get from Harbor Freight. It's still a cheap set of vernier calipers. They're not an engineer. They don't have to be space shuttle building worthy. Just a little better than the Harbor Freight is all you really need. And truthfully, it's more. I've got a much brighter screen. The battery life seems to be exponentially longer, even though I'm using the same batteries in both kinds. It's just a better set of calipers. A little bit heavier metal. There's not as much flex. But again, all I need to do is set my calipers that 1.38 inches, whatever fraction it happens to be. I don't know. Yeah, we'll go with that. I don't know. I don't have to know. The best part about this is I don't have to know. All right, so 1.38. Once I've got my calipers set, I'm going to use the inside prongs to set my compass. You can use any type of compass. I started doing the marking with just a straight compass. One side had a point, one side had a pencil, and I would set that up and I would scribe. And because I'm working on a spherical shape, it was kind of challenging to keep everything lined up and accurate. So one of the books says to get a compass set, pair, whatever, that has ends that articulate. So you've got your 2 straight V arms, and then your pencil point and your point can be articulated, which will allow the tips of each of those to be perpendicular to the spherical shape that you're currently working with. So yada, 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 way more complication and precision. Buy something like this. It's a Miles Craft Scribe Tech. And the reason why I like it the best right now is because one leg does articulate, and I can really crank down on the lock and screw so that when I'm heavy-handedly scribing my circles, which I do, I'm not changing my diameter, my measurement. So I will take my compass and we'll just change it right there. I'll put the tip of the point on one of the prongs. I will put the tip of the pencil on the other prong. I'll try to sneak out to the end of the prong as best as possible. And I will lock that down as tight as I can. Now, in the book, they say to start with a point on the end grain. I don't know why. I don't know why that would make a difference. He's wanting you to have one pole on each end grain for some reason. I don't know why. I don't think it matters. But we're going to start here, which is end grain-ish. I'm going to make a dimple. That's point number 1. I have 11 more to go. Okay. Once I make that dimple, I'm simply going to touch the pencil and very carefully, very gently drawing a circle, a radius. And because I made an indent with the pointy part, should this fall out, I go right back to that single point of registration. Okay. I scribed a circle that is set to a measurement on my compass of 1.38 inches. Now I will pick a point on that line, on that circle. It doesn't matter where, just pick a point. All right, I'm making a little dimple. That is my second out of 12 layout point. All right, so I've already got 2 done. I only need to figure out 10. Now I want to take this circle that I just drew and I want to break that down into 5 even pieces. I don't care what the measurement is. It just has to be 5 even sections. If you get that right, the rest of it just works. Some say it's math, some say it's magic. I'm going with the magic part. That's fun. All right, so I made a dimple on the line. I'm simply going to draw a pencil mark. Okay. I need to step forward. All right, normally I'm wearing very strong magnification when I'm doing this, which does help improve my precision. There's point number 2. Stop making all that noise, Tom. So, not Dolan. Dolan is being very quiet. I appreciate that. Probably should wake him up. There's point number 3. All right, I'm trying really hard not to make hard dimples, just in case I need to go back and erase. This is point number 4. And if I did it right, that point should line up. Whoops. That point should line up. And it's not. All right, so it's going to be, this is too wide. So we're going to adjust it just a little bit. Adjust it just a little bit more. Stop laughing. It's not funny. All right. So seriously, this is the hardest part of the entire process. It's stupid, but if you get it right, the rest of it works. Okay. So since I know that my 4 little marks are wrong, I'm going to erase my 4 little marks. You know, if you get too many marks on here, put it back in between centers, hit it with 320 grit, sand off your pencil, and get back to work. Okay. So high precision removal tool. We're going to start at the point. There's mark 1. And one pictures. Mark 2. Take your time. Take your time with this. Is mark 3. How late do we have here? Midnight. Oh, second time's a charm. All right, so I'm really pleased with that. I was not expecting that. We were just going to push forward, and I was going to show you what it looks like when you screw up. But I think we're in a good place. All right, so I have my ring. I have a starting central point. I now have 5 places marked out on that ring. Now I can mark out half of my sphere. And I like to go ahead and start with that being point number 1. So I'm going to start where I had the hard dimple, which was there. And I'm simply going to scribe an arc, which should connect to a couple of the existing points on the sphere. This is where you need to not be heavy-handed. If I'm being heavy-handed and I push too hard on my compass, I'm going to start spreading those legs no matter how tight I get that little part there. All right, and then I need to remember where I started. So I started there. I want to circle that one so I know I don't need to go back to it. I'm going to move to my next point. This particular intersection. There's a dimple. Should line up with that. It should line up with the whole. Takes your time. Okay, 3 points mark. I want to continue on that same sphere line, whatever radius. I'll do it again. All right, that one's a little off. That one's a little off. That's okay. It's close enough.
So you're in essence drawing a circle at every point.
Yeah. In essence, I'm drawing circles at every. Each of the original 5 points I'm using as the starting point for the next circle. So that was the point that I just did. I'm moving to this particular intersection here, which should put me right where I need to be. And because I'm really not a precision person, close enough is close enough. Some of these are not 100% accurate. I'll pass this around when I'm done, just so that you get the understanding that it doesn't have to be that laser precise. You know, I'm a wood turner. I'm going to be removing material. I'm working with an organic compressible material. The wood's going to change during the process. It's going to change over the years, and I'm okay with it. Okay, so I now have 6 points marked out, my end pole and the 5 original points marked out on the sphere. Right? Can everybody kind of see that? Okay. Okay, now that I've got that top half done, I need to flip it over, and we're going to the lower section, and I now start making lines from every other intersection below that radius that I turned, that I marked. And if I did it right, that should intersect. It's not going to be absolutely dead on. I don't know if my sphere is off or if my compass is widened or what. But that's okay. It just needs to be reasonably close enough. So there's my 7th point. And then somewhere in here is going to be my 8th point. And when I start getting to a point where I don't have truly accurate intersections, I fake it. I try to get as close as I can, so I'm going to split the difference and see if I can't line the pencil up, figure out where the accuracy point really is, hope for the best. There's a lot of hoping for the best. That's actually not terrible. Anyway, so I will keep going until I have 12 individual points marked out, okay? And here I'm going, I'm just marking more of the points. So just like that, I have an additional, just like that, I have 2 spheres that are now completely marked out with those additional points. What I like to do is I like taking a Sharpie, and even though I've circled each point that I've set my compass at, I like taking a Sharpie and making a dark mark or a red mark or something. And then I like taking a spring-loaded punch and making a much more accurate, deeper hole, because I need that spring-loaded punch, a deeper hole, to help set this up for when I'm starting the turning process. And that's what we're ready for now. Then don't do the scrub. The answer is I don't know. You have to do geometry, spherical geometry. There's always one. There's always one guy. His name is usually Tom, but it's always one. Anyway, so the hard part's done. This describing all of those points, getting the original layout. That's the part that is the hardest part of the entire process. You guys can turn a sphere, you can make a jig, you can turn a sphere accurately. The pencil part, lining it out, yeah, all bets are off. Sometimes I really do have to sit there and go over it, make an adjustment, go over it, make an adjustment, keep going and so on. It's a slow process, but once you get it, once you're close enough, the rest of it's very simple. It's a knockout bar. That's not good. All right. Knockout bar is too short and too small. You need one of those? Yeah, all right, so that's got to come off. Let's how strong do we feel? Really, you guys? Really? All right, I'm open to suggestions. I need my thing. It's too short.
The hammer on something.
I got them out in my box. All right, we'll do it that way. There we got it. All right. Yay! Woo! You don't have to be precise with the steel cup. You only have to be precise with the marker. All right, now moving forward, it doesn't matter which set of tools you use, you need to have a way to hold that sphere for the turning process, so the hollowing process. So we'll start with the set that I was gonna work on, the Connoisseur set. I bought the tools. The tools came with a sphere chuck. This is basically just a big piece of plastic. So I've got a threaded collar. I've got an internal collar with a pin, registers right there. This sphere chuck is specifically designed to hold that 1 5/8 inch sphere. The 2.5 inch sphere will not fit in this particular chuck, and that's okay because I know how to make a sphere chuck. There's instructions in my book. All right, so there's my 2 5/8 sphere is in the sphere chuck. Now the one that I made is for some reason I have a length of 3-inch Delrin. It was just a long cylinder, 3-inch solid Delrin for whatever reason. Put a faceplate ring on it. Nova makes a really good faceplate ring. This one matches up with my 50mm jaws, so I don't have to worry about registration every time I put the chuck on and off the lid. Okay, just the faceplate ring. You could use an actual faceplate. The problem with an actual faceplate is it's got the threaded part, makes it really hard to sit down on a flat surface. I can take this off the chuck, set it down on a flat surface. It's not going to fall over, roll over, fall on the floor, which inevitably will happen. So that's my preferred method. If you've got a bunch of 3-inch, 2-inch faceplates, and that's what you want to use, because you don't use them for anything else, but you don't want to give them away, throw them away, or sell them, there you go. Make yourself up some sphere chucks. So basically, what the instructions said was to drill to a particular length, round it out. I went back to my die cut machine, my Silhouette, and I made a die, 2.5 inch sphere, again out of heavy cardstock, and I used that to gauge the roundness of the inside of my sphere chuck. Take a pass or two, check. Take a pass or two, check. Got to a point where the inside was fairly round. I took another piece of Delrin. This was actually off the cutting board material. Drilled some holes that lined up with the holes that I had made in the chuck body, and kind of did the same process on the inside of the ring lid. And there you go. I now have a sphere chuck that will specifically hold a 2.5 inch sphere. Now, the biggest issue that I've had with Delrin which happened this afternoon, was another one of my pitching points, is when I had the failure today, one of many failures today, that one, it's because I was working on one of the insides and the steer slipped. It slipped within the chuck. And I think it was my fault that I've been on the road a lot, and I happened to leave this particular steer tight in this particular chuck, and because it's a plastic, it probably stretched a little bit. So I wasn't getting as good of holding pressure from the chuck itself. Simple solution. You may have noticed that I had some blue painter's tape down in the bottom of this. If your size is a little off, if there's a little slip, it's moving around, you can put a little painter's tape in there. You can put a thin piece of sandpaper down in the bottom. Just make sure you work it so that it's sitting in a curved position. Or if you're like me, for some reason, you have several tons of foam, craft foam, 1/8 inch thick or thinner, a little piece of craft foam, really, really compressible material, something like that. It can keep it from slipping, but if your collar has started to wear or relax or expand or whatever, that will give you just enough bite to hold things in place. So I should have done that. I didn't because I wanted to show you what happens when you don't. So I did that for you. Anyway, all right. So now that we've got our chuck either made or purchased, we're getting set up. I found the easiest way to line things up is simply take like a 60-degree cone. I'm going to go ahead and use yours because it's handy. 60-degree live center your tailstock. So there's the pointy bit. I'm going to bring that and get my engine a little way. Make sure it's extended far enough. I'm going to loosen that collar so I can manipulate my steer. How many of you have metal dental picks in your workshop? Okay, every hand should go up. My mother got me a set of metal dental picks for like the first Christmas that we had together. And I was kind of insulted. What the hell? Seriously, Mom? Seriously? Really? Wow, you don't like me at all. She probably didn't, but that wasn't the reason. The reason why she gave them to me is because they're an unbelievably handy tool. That you get these dental picks, and some have hooks, and some have more straights, and some are just like ice picks, different configurations. I've found an enormous amount of different uses for these silly little things. Right now, the best use for it is to grab one of my points and kind of line up my sphere, my live center. I could also go the other way. I could unscrew this, put that on my quill. I could take the collar off, put it on my quill. I could line the dimple up with my live center, press everything together, put it back together, screw it back together, yada, yada, yada. I'm feeling a little lazy. I happen to have the dental tool. So all we got to do is get kind of close. Kind of close. Line it up. All right, so that hole is now centered on my live center. So now I can tighten this up. I would lock my spindle. I've got a Tommy bar specifically for this particular chuck. I've got a Tommy bar specifically for this chuck. There's a hole right there. I would tighten it fairly tight. It's plastic. I'm probably not going to overstrip it, but I need it to hold this firmly. I've got that blue painter's tape down on the bottom. It's not as likely to slip. If I have issues, I'll put a small piece of foam. This comes out of my way. I leave the pointy bit in for a few moments because the next thing that I need to do is set my platform accurately so that the tools that I'm using, the cutting edges, are lined up on spindle center. The easiest way to do that is to have a platform that actually works with the banjo. Even if I move the stop collar, it's not going to go any lower because there's a bar that runs right across the bottom. So we're not going to be able to do this part as a demonstration. But what I would do is I would take the pointy cutter tool. I would line up my tool rest platform, I would loosen the lock collar. I would lower it until the edge of the scraper is dead center with the edge of that very fine point, right? And then I would lock my banjo in place. I would lock my toe post at the right height. I would lock my locking collar so this can come on and off, and I don't have to dial in the height every single time. And then I would come over here and I would line up my, I'm just going to pretend that, I would line up my platform so that I'm fairly close. This particular platform, you can see at the radius cut, I can get really close to that sphere. Turn on my lathe, maybe 750, 800 RPM seemed to be a good speed for doing this. And I would use this pointy scraping tool to just go in and hollow out a cone-shaped hollow on the inside. Because the tool platform has a specific radius, I can only go a certain depth, and I know that I only want to make that hole an inch wide on the outside. So again, I go to my vernier calipers, I would set them, and I would gauge until I get that 1 inch. I could set up my regular compass, and I could just scribe an inch radius around that point so that I know how wide I need to make that hole. Once I get the width right, the shape of the tool will allow me to get the cone shape on the inside correct. Okay? After that, now I get to start playing with my individual cutters. Sure. Oh man, because you put the spear, if you put it in the vacuum truck and still, I don't think it would be strong enough for what we have to do. Can you? Yes. Would you be able to get a good enough hole long enough to do what we need to do? I don't think so. And then the other part is we're putting the holes into the structure, so eventually there's going to be a lot of hole number 2. You've got gappage. Okay, if you do it right, when you get to that second hole, you've got gappage. So no, vacuum truck for that one. But thank you for bringing that up. So I wasn't going to remember the truck to mention. All right, can you see these cutters right here? So the Conestoga set has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 radius cutters. This one. The other set of tools, the spring tools, have 4 cutters, but they're all about the same thing. They're a specific length. They're not coming after me. They're going away from my truck. Yeah, I know, but they're not coming after me. They're going away from my truck. Everything's fine. All of these cutters have a very specific radius, all right? Well, like I said, the radius of the tool is 100% dependent on the radius of the sphere. You get the sphere wrong, this isn't going to help. Right? Let's see, my finished one has come up here. All right, so I'm gonna put a cutter in. I'm gonna show you the motion on the outside sphere without breaking my own project. Normally, you would start with the longest cutter, deepest hole, right? And it's just a scraper. You go down into the hole. I found it easier to go in at an angle and then scrape until the radius of the tool touches the face of the sphere. I know I'm at my absolute depth. I can't go any deeper. And then I just draw the tool towards me along that radius. I'm just following the radius of the sphere. It's really simple once you get it lined up. Okay? So if I'm using the shallowest cutter, I've done 5 circles already. The next one is that last one. Put that cutter in. Can you see that? Put that cutter in, and then I simply slowly draw it towards myself. Right? If you need to relief, if you need to remove and clear, compressed air is really handy. At this point, you blow out your chips, go right back in, finish scribing that art. Basically, I'm turning 1/12 of every sphere per hole. Okay, and if your diameter is right and your layout points are right, when you do that, all of those 12 individual radii will connect internally. and then separate, okay? Because they separate, we need to do something to keep everything from moving on the inside while we're working. Easiest way to do that that I have found is what several turners have demonstrated already. 1-inch foam, 1-inch high density foam, insulation, foam insulation. Inch is going to be your best bet. I've got a wire knife, a hot knife, that I cut my foam into 1-inch long strips, and then I cut it into little chunks, and then I take a sharp X-Acto knife. That's the only thing that I found to cut this cleanly. Sharp X-Acto knife and kind of angle, and then I can use that and compress and twist and compress and twist and compress and twist, break off whatever's at the end, and then I might need to get back in there with my X-Acto knife and cut it off. But basically, I want to plug each hole as I remove the material. So I do all of my cutters, I remove all of the material, put a plug in, and then I set it up for the next hole. It doesn't matter what the next hole is. I drill that cone-shaped hole. I start with my deepest cutter and then work my way to the surface. Once that hole is clean, blow it out, remove this from the chuck, take the next piece of foam, compress, twist, plug that hole. Make sure that I don't have any of this sitting proud on the surface, because that can affect how it sits in the chuck, right? But it's compressible, so if I'm close, it's probably going to be all right. Anyway, I do that 12 times, and then when I'm done, or I do it 11 3/4 times, I don't have to put the plug in the last hole. When I'm done, all I need to do is find my dental pick and pick that foam, all of those foam plugs out of it. One time use, don't try to save this. It's really not that expensive. But when that's done, everything should be separate. Everything should be moving. You should be really happy, pretty proud, and there you go. The only thing that I had to do at the end of the one that I did finish was a little very light hand sanding. And then because the piece of wood that I was using had cracks already, I had 2 pieces of separation, a little thin CA, glued them in place. I'm probably going to put some paint on the outside, a painting technique of some sort on the outside. I haven't decided yet. On that first one, I need to get in there and maybe do a little light sanding. I've got some ideas of how to make little L-shaped sanders or tool-shaped sanders that I can get in. You probably want to sand each hole as you go, instead of trying to line everything up and fish a piece of sandpaper in there. You know, I don't know how to do it once it's completely done, but I think you can get a tool, set up some type of sanding tool, L-shaped sanding tool, and get in there and do a little light sanding on the inside of each of those holes without any. But that is the Chinese. Oh, I see it. We just did this and it looks fun. Six times. 7 times, because you need to make the hole.
And you go to the next hole.
Yeah, but once it's lined out and once you're comfortable with the process, these are scrapers. They're inside scrapers, so it's just an inside scraper. Don't, oh my gosh, it's a radius cutter. No, it's an inside scraper. You can handle inside scraper. You're just making a scrape. And the tool will only cut to a certain place and then stop. You can't go any deeper, so you can't overdo it. You don't have to be precise. But yeah, you do it, drill your hole, longest, next shortest, next shortest, next shortest you do. So seven tool changes. Again, this one is really intuitive because it's, you take the one out, which, it's probably hot, and then you put the next one in, cut, take that out. Oh, that one's hot as well. You know, so you get, I got to a point where I would just loosen it, tap it, the hot cutter would come out, stick the next one in, and I go back to work. I didn't even turn off the lathe at that point. I had them lined up by height, and the bench was right here, so all I had to do was spin around, dump the hot cutters, put the next longest or next shortest in, make my next half radius, and then wash, rinse, repeat. Sherry?
What's the kind of fire?
They're high-speed steel. It feels like powdered metal. I don't know if it's 811 or if they've got a coating on them. And Tom, you asked about sharpening. Or one of you guys asked about sharpening. Diamond hone when you need it, just on the top. You don't need to worry about bevels or anything. Don't muck with them. They have a particular geometry. If you make your own, or if you're interested in making your own, buy the book. Yeah, and basically, so what I'm thinking is if I want to do something bigger or something smaller, at that point, I have to make my own tools. Well, I got that silhouette die cut machine. I could do a simple CAD drawing. I can, type in, it has to be this diameter and this length, and that radius has to be this much of a curve. I don't have to math out any of this. I can just clicky, 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 and have the machine do the part that's challenging for me to do. We have access to an enormous amount of technology. It doesn't have to always be something that is unattainable or not helpful. I can use this die cut machine, that people are making flower cards out of. I can use to make patterns for tools and then print it out on a piece of sticker paper and just peel that sticker off, put it on a piece of high-speed steel, take that to the grinder or the cutter or the whatever, and just cut or grind up to the lines on the pattern. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a toolmaker, engineer person. There's ways around this now that can make it really simple. And if you just want to buy a set of tools and play, talk to me because, did she sneak out already?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, can you get her the jig? Can somebody get her the jig? So I made this little Pac-Man looking thing, waka, 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 waka. And the reason why I did is because I was playing with my 3D printer and it happened to have orange filament in it, so it happened to be orange. But with the spring it tools, the tools that I know are currently still available for sale, you have to set these to a very specific length depending on the cutter, and it's not obvious.
You've got a cutter for each reed.
I have a cutter for each radius. On both sets of tools, I have different cutters. So this set that I prefer has 6 cutters in that straight, that cone-shaped cutter. 6 radiuses and 1 straight cutter. The other set of tools has 4 radius cutters and a separate tool that will allow you to make the hole. So how do you know what size or shape to make the hole? I've got a cutter that will allow me to do that. You guys are more than welcome to come up and look at these when we're done. But especially after using this other set, I assume incorrectly that once I get this out, it's got a locking screw on the cutter, it's got a locking screw on the handle, it's got a slot where the one screw goes. You put it in there, you shove it all the way down, you lock it in place, and you go to work, right? The first 3 deepest cutters works just fine. The 4th cutter ends up being way too short, but there's not a gap. And I was looking at it, it wasn't registering. It's like, that's not going to work. Well, we're just going to do it. And obviously it didn't work. So I went back to the book and I tried to find videos. There's not a lot of videos out there on this particular technology, so I guess I'm going to have to do that now too. I went back to the book and there's a page on there with a couple of tool setting templates. Well, shit. It makes it easy. I need to have an 1/8 gap in between each ring. So my surface ring needs to be an 1/8 inch, and I need an 1/8 gap. And then my second ring needs to be an 1/8 inch. Second gap is an 1/8 inch, and so on and so on and so on. So I have a CAD drawing app on my iPad, and I have an Apple Pencil, and I had not used either one of those to speak of. It was a stupid waste of money because yay, technology, and I'm an idiot. I was like, all right, I need to make a jig. Well, I could go to the lathe and I could probably turn one out of wood and that'd be fine. I sat down and forced myself how to learn some really low-level basic CAD drawing on the iPad with the Apple Pencil. It works really well. And then I took that and I created the appropriate file and I dumped it into my 3D printer. Now I have some 3D printing experience, so this part was fairly easy. But it was really cool being able to design. I designed that. I could do that on the lathe with particle, but I designed that in CAD drawing, print it on my 3D printer, and I can now use that to set the extension of each of those 4 cutters. Really simple, okay? It's a very simple process. Do that, tighten the one screw, flip it over, tighten the other screw, do my work, dump it out. The next cutter I have to set to a different extension, And that has made a world of difference with these tools. Again, the instructions are not great. Okay. Like a lot of instructions, they're just not great, or we know better, so we don't read. That was probably, I know how to use these. No, yeah, no, I had no idea. I wish they would modify the design of these to make them more intuitive, that you don't have to worry about setting jig, but they haven't, and nobody's going to talk to me, and not a lot of people do them, but it's a lot of fun. And I guess in a really long, drawn out, roundabout kind of way, I just wanted to prove that I can do this anybody can. Seriously, I'm not a precision turner. I'm an artist. I don't do math. I'm not an engineer. This stuff scared me. I bought my original set of tools nine, 10 years ago. I bought the tools. I bought the green book. I bought the DVD about 10 years ago. I looked at them. I tried to read the book. My eyes crossed. I gave myself a migraine, and I said, "I'm not doing this." And I brought them back out every year or so. So, all right, let's look at them. Let's think this through. Couldn't get it. Couldn't get it. Couldn't get it. Couldn't get it. Bought the other set of tools because one of my friends made me do it when we were at SWAT, and he took me over and said, "You want to do these? You need to buy this." So I bought this set. Tried it. Couldn't get it. Couldn't get it. Couldn't get it. And then because I wanted to do something else, I finally figured it out. Okay, in order to do this, I got to figure out that layout thing on the sphere. And then once I figured out, I don't have to understand the parts that I thought I needed to understand. I got out of my own way, and the whole rest of it was simple. Okay, you can do the turning parts. Setup's hard. Make the setup easy.
Okay, what I was thinking before you started, did she turn the